Good afternoon and welcome to Word for the Day. And if you're wondering what I'm doing in the Bahamas, no, it's not the Bahamas. It's actually in my office, my study. But I just decided I was feeling a bit fed up this morning, so I decided to come into my study and have a look at my lovely wallpaper, which reminds me of some of the more tropical places we've been. And I've put on my nice t-shirt that I actually did buy from the Bahamas. So today we're going to continue with Lectico Divina. And if you remember, yesterday I spoke about Lectico Divina. It's an old, very old actually. Benedict used it in the 6th century and monks did as well. And it's a way of learning more about what God is saying to you through reading the Bible. And there are 4 stages: reading a verse, reflecting on a verse, responding on the verse, and resting on the verse. Lectico, meditation, oratio, and contemplation. So it's the 4 R's really. That's the best way I remember it. Read, reflect, respond, and rest. And yesterday I spoke about the first 2 stages, which were reading the Bible verse and reflecting on the Bible verse. And if you remember, I said what you needed to do was to find yourself somewhere quiet and a Bible verse that's probably about 15 words long, maybe a bit longer, it doesn't really matter, but about 15 words long. And the verse that I'm going to be using tomorrow when we go through the whole process is Psalm 37 verse 4, which is, "Take delight in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart." So the first thing you have to do, I'm going to just go briefly over the 2 that I explained yesterday. The first one is to read the passage. So read the passage first. Try and get an opportunity to get to know the scripture passage. And just listen carefully for any words or phrases that might seem to jump out of you. And it's not, you mustn't force this, but wait sort of patiently really for God to give you that gentle guidance. And then once something stands out at you about the Bible verse, the second thing you need to do is to reflect. So you read the verse again, you think about what's jumped out of you the first time you read it, and you just reread it again, reflecting carefully on what God is saying to you. Try not to analyse it, because it's easy to sort of slip into that study mode really. But what you're doing is trying to listen to what God is saying. And if something jumps out at you a second time, there might be a word or a phrase that strikes you, just stop and rest with it. Now, the last 2 stages are respond and rest. So you've read the reading twice, you've thought about it. Is there anything that jumps out at you? What do you do next? Well, one of the things you can do is you can pray about it. Read the verse again for the 3rd time and start to say to God, what is it, God, that you're telling me about this verse? What is it that you want me to remember about this verse, or maybe apply something in my life? What is it you're saying to me? How do you want me to respond? So you're entering in a response with God, a bit like praying. If you've never prayed before, a conversation that you're having with God. You might want to record what you think God is saying to you. Sometimes if you forget things like I do, I always find it's easier just to write things down. And then the last thing you do, the 4th thing you do, is you rest in it. Now I would suggest that you read it maybe for a 4th time again, but after you've done that, you spend around 10 minutes in silent contemplation. So that's not praying or meditation. All you're doing is just sitting quietly to allow God to work. And if your mind starts to wander, just bring it back to the verse again. Just reread the verse again. But just sit with God. Now, 10 minutes is a long time to sit in quiet, but it's a really good discipline to practice. So, what have we done so far? Lectico Divina. We've taken a passage from the Bible. We've read the Bible once to see if anything jumps out at us from the Bible. Then we read the Bible passage again and we reflect just to see if the points that just to see if whatever jumped out at us the first time comes again. You might want to just reread the verses if you want, but just carefully think about it. What is it that God is saying to me about this verse? Then the third thing we do is we respond. So we read the Bible reading again for a third time. You might want to pray now and begin a dialogue with God. You might want to say a prayer. What are you saying to me, God, about this verse? You might want to write it down so that you don't forget, and you can go back then and look at it again. And then the last thing you do after the first three readings, after the first three things that you're doing, which is reading, reflecting, responding, now rest. And that doesn't mean rest on your bed. Well, you can rest on your bed, but spend 10 minutes in silent contemplation. And that in itself is a discipline. And it's really good. And you might be really surprised as to what happens. So tomorrow, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that Bible verse, Psalm 37, verse 4, and we're going to go through the whole process of Lectico Divina. If you've only just joined us today, what I suggest you do is go back and just pre-read yesterday's. Now, it isn't going to work for everybody, and for some people they might feel, actually, this isn't for me. But a lot of people have found this is something I've never done before. Studied a verse, well, not studied, that's the wrong word, mustn't use that word study. I've read it, I've reflected on it, I've responded to it, and I've rested in it. And you never know, you might find that God is speaking to you. Well, thank you for joining me today, and I hope you'll join me tomorrow for Word for the Day. It's 12 o'clock again tomorrow. I probably won't be in the Bahamas. Well, not Bahamas, is it? My make-believe Bahamas tomorrow. But I hope you have a good day. Okay, bye-bye.